Welcome back, Bantwana Benkosi. Indeed, this is Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. And in this segment, we are going to discuss the activities or the developments in the schooling system here in the country. The question of the vetting of sex offenders register in the Department of Education, as well as the new research that has emerged around statutory rape in schools and teachers. I'm joined on the line by Likho, Bottoman, Director of Social Cohesion at the National Department of Basic Education. Welcome to Power Talk, and thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ndlozi. Good morning to you and the listeners.
Thank you deeply. And I'm also joined by Professor Azwihangswisi, Mavhandu-Mudzusi, as well as Ayobami Adekola, who are the researchers at UNISA, the College of Human Sciences, responsible for the study around statutory rape. Welcome both, and thanks deeply for joining us here on Power Talk.
Thank you. Let me correct you.
Yes, please.
My name.
Thanks.
Azwihangswisi.
Azwihangswisi.
Mavhandu-Mudzusi.
Azwihangswisi Mavhandu-Mudzusi. Mudzusi.
Yes, that's correct.
Let's start with you, Likho Bottoman. Is that correct pronunciation?
It is correct, Doc. Thank you.
Nkosi. The minister made a very scary claim sometime last week that only 19% of the teachers have been vetted. Can you take us through how this 19% was arrived at as a figure, and the challenges relating to the vetting process?
All right. Thank you so much, Doc. So we have agreed with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development that given the need for those who are in contact with children who must be vetted, they need to support the Department of Basic Education to vet not only educators, but the entire education personnel. Because you must remember, Doc, that there are teachers, then there are non-teaching staff, then there are sports coaches, and then there are debate coaches and so forth. Mm-hmm. So all of those people need to be vetted.
Yeah.
And so I think what has happened with the system that does the vetting for us is this. Firstly, the demand that we have created for the vetting, I don't think the system was ready for it, because when you look at the capacity of the people who need to do this work within the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, and the amount of vetting applications that we send to the department, it looks like the demand is very, very high. And they have reported this to us. The second thing was that there were no mechanisms that were put in place before we sent the application, so that these vetting processes are undertaken on a cost-neutral basis.
Yeah.
Because ordinarily this is something that you pay for. But because it is a government-to-government agreement, we should have had, in fact, a mechanism where we agree that we won't have to pay for this. And I think some of the standoff has got to do with the fact that, so who foots the bill between the educator who has come forward to say, here I am, I can be vetted, I'm making myself available, and the employer who says, I need to vet this employee. And so those kinds of mechanisms were not set. And the third thing, Doc, that we probably need to clarify for South Africans is that we were talking about the National Register of Sex Offenders, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it is important for us to note that there is another register that is a child protection register, mm-hmm. which also needs to be vetted against. Because if you vet only against the sex offenders register, it means then that you're only really just vetting against convictions that come from courts.
Yeah.
Whereas if you vet against the Child Protection Register, it means that you are vetting against any disciplinary procedure that has been undertaken against a person who has violated the rights of children in one way or another, not just sex offenders.
Yes.
And so I think that is also another a snag that we're facing with. But to respond to these challenges, we are saying we are in the new age. We are in the fourth industrial revolution, maybe also approaching the fifth industrial revolution. We're thinking about even instituting some AI mechanisms that will allow us to fast track these vetting processes, because all that we need, Doc, is that we don't even need to do the biometrics in the way that we're doing it at the moment. All that we need is the ID number of the educator that must be checked against these two registers, and then it can be generated automatically. And that's something that we need to work on amongst ourselves, the Department of Justice and the Department of Social Development.
Before we go on the way forward, the hiring process of teachers, is that the point at which, I mean, I'm speaking here about those who are just joining the system. I can see that there could be huge difficulties with regards to the existing ones, but at a point of hiring, how does that particular vetting take place?
Sure. Ideally, it should be happening at the point of hiring, Doc. But so what happens now is that because of the backlog, an interview process would have been undertaken and concluded. A submission is made to the Department of Justice to make this vetting process, and the legs are taking so long that the appointment is already made and the person is needed, and that person needs to start because there must be a teacher in front of the child at every minute that they are in school or that they are in class. And so sometimes, out of panic and out of urgency, the appointment is made for that teacher so that teacher can start teaching whilst the results are waiting. And that information is given to the teacher that should there be any finding in the vetting that we have submitted to the Department of Justice, we will withdraw this appointment. So it's almost like a preliminary appointment that is made, but it should actually, ideally, that vetting should be happening before the appointment is made.
But what would it look like in practical terms? I'm imagining here somebody gets fired in Mkanduli at a certain school because of sexual harassment, and then they move to Mngeni in KwaZulu-Natal, and they find a teaching job there. Shouldn't the Department of Education have a record of disciplinary matters?
Yes, that's
and
why
who was found guilty for what?
Yes, absolutely. So that's why we're saying, Doc, that actually the most or the closest to reliability between these two registers is probably the one on child protection, because the outcomes in the Child Protection Register are done fairly quickly. And so if we just focus on the sex offenders registers only, we are always going to miss these educators that live here and re-emerge somewhere else. We're always going to miss them. And so we want to say, and unfortunately, and I think you understand this very well, that because the Child Protection Register vetting is not the one that is legislated, we can't. We are not in a position to change what the legislation is saying, but we can, of course, develop further regulations or guidelines that will allow us, as we vet against the one that is legislated, that we're also vetting against the one that is more reliable for us at this stage. And so, and I'm going to admit to you that there have been cases like that, where we've heard of teachers that ran away from a process that is still pending in another area, and then they emerge, and then they get this position in another area, and then they become repeat offenders for that matter. And when they are found, Doc, of course, then action is taken against them. But in most cases, when they are not yet found, it means then that we've got to deal now with the issue of the protection of children in their hands. And it's something that needs to be really, really taken into consideration. And I do think that the pending work that is happening between all the actors of society and the stakeholders, including the Education Labor Relations Council, who have been very instrumental in helping us think things through in a way that will allow us to keep these teachers accountable. We're hoping that that process is really going to lead us to a point where we will leave no stone unturned and we will not miss these cases as we have been in the recent years.
Is there any relationship whatsoever with state security? In the development of the capability for vetting?
At the moment, I'm not particularly sure.
Because Likho, there's nobody vetted in this country. Judges not vetted. Military commands not vetted. Generals in the police not vetted. Teachers not vetted. These are matters that I think at this stage we ought to say they pose serious national security. But I'm thinking here there is an entire department whose capability comes with the capacities for vetting, for aggressive vetting of government personnel. Is there any relationship? And I'm probing this because we've had this vetting question not only to the teachers, but across society.
That's absolutely true. Doc, I would be lying to you if I said to you I understand what is happening in the backdrop of the vetting process and the relationship between the Department of Justice and state security for that matter. And probably this is something that they would have responded to indicate to us if they do actually reach out to state security to assist them with this. But all we know is that when the applications are made, they are handled by the provincial or regional offices of the Department of Justice with the limited human capacity that they have in those regional and provincial offices to deal with these cases. That's as far as we have been told by the Department of Justice. And I think there is work that is underway to also address those human capacity challenges that they have reported to us.
Final question, around this matter of the register of sex offenders, maybe generally, offenders in general, as you indicated. Since the revelation of 19%, and this is, as you and I could agree, possibly means there are schools that you have no idea totally if the children are in the hands of safe people. So you have, as the department, by revealing this number, admitted that you are not protecting children. But what urgent mechanisms are in place now to address this challenge? You spoke earlier, and I would also include this payment predicament that you noted. What's the way forward?
So, Doc, it's very ironic that since probably 2 weeks ago, we've been sitting even at night in net joint engagements about what we need to do. And I will tell you, one of the things that the net joints is unwavering about is the issue that needs to be addressed by the state broadly and collaboratively on vetting of education personnel. Even when sometimes it falls through the cracks in the discussions, because remember, the issue of sexual abuse and harassment and child sexual abuse in South Africa is a broad matter that requires all of us. Even sometimes when it disappears in the conversations, it always has to arise because it's something that we cannot leave behind in part of what we need to do in the next 90 days to do impactful work. So I guess, Doc, what we need to do between ourselves and the DOJ and the Department of Social Development, and maybe also now bring on board state security, as you are mentioning, it means that it has got to be business unusual because we need to do this for our children. But I also do need to state that, the vetting process is just one part of the, preventative measures. One of the other things that we've picked up, and the Children's Institute in UCT has given us this evidence, which says that the work that we have been doing as basic education to prevent and manage cases of sexual abuse and harassment in schools actually has got little impact in the lives of children. You know why? Because we talk to children. Now, when you talk to children, you're actually just talking to the potential victims. But there isn't work that talks to the potential perpetrators. And so children cannot protect themselves. So you can give them all the information that you can give them around preventing, hey, do this, do that. But in the end, they are still at risk because they don't rape themselves. They are raped by adults and stuff. So it means that even us, in the comprehensive sexuality education and life orientation work that we do, we need to strengthen the elements that give us contact.
But Likho, you agree that these postulations shouldn't be coming from you. You should be telling me what you're going to do. I see what needs to be done. Everyone can do that. But you are in a position to execute actual systemic change. And my question really relates to what is in place at the moment to reduce, or rather, to resolve this 19% that was announced by the minister. At a systemic level, what are those systemic interventions? And unless, of course, you're saying you are still canvassing those grounds.
Yes, absolutely. That's what we're saying.
Okay.
Precisely because, Doc, this is as much as it's teachers that must be vetted, but the competency itself is not a basic education competency. We rely on our sister departments to help us to do this. And so all that we can do really is to advocate and canvass, as you put it. And we've been sitting even over the weekend at night to set it up nicely. And we really are hoping that in the next couple of days, we will be receiving a response from the Department of Justice to say, at least in the next 90 days, what are they going to do to help us with this?
If you've just joined us, this is Power Talk, Bantwana Benkosi, with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. We are speaking about the Department of Education, two questions really. The announced condition, rather, that only 19% of the teachers have been vetted in relation to the National Register of Sex Offenders. I want to go into the second matter now, Likho, and I think I must draw in Prof. Mudzusi about the teenage pregnancy and the question of statutory rape. If you may, I'd like you to introduce quite patiently the question of their study, generally laid down for us. And then maybe we can also get your response to the revelations of their study. Prof?
Thank you very much, Doctor. Our study has been conducted in Vembe District, so Pansbeck North, Second. This is a project which I can say I started it while I was still working at the University of Venda around 2010. Because I was seeing people from that area, students, coming in already infected with HIV. So to intervene, I decided to say, let me come up with a strategy to empower educators to offer contextually relevant HIV prevention, education, and sexuality education in general. So we were continuing with that. We developed manual. Then at first when we started, pregnancy rate was very, very high. So, but after addressing the teachers regarding the approach and also the value of being pregnant-free, we saw reduction in pregnancy. But the shock came last year when we visited with several team members to discuss with educators. So one question which was raised was related to sexual abuse. In fact, it was raised by the teachers themselves saying that learners are sexually abused and the parents condone them. Then we said, but there is a policy from Department of Education which mentioned that if a learner is pregnant and is under the age of 16 years, that is taken as statutory rape, which needs to be reported. That's when we found that most of educators were not even aware of that statutory rape policy. Then the few who were aware of, they were saying it's also challenging because the policy was brought to school. There's no guideline on how to implement it. And so also the fear of what will happen, because the rapist might be the teacher, might be the community member, might be the truck driver, might be the pastor, might be almost everybody in the community where they are staying, which becomes also challenging to say if they are reporting that case, what is going to happen to them, because they're even threatened to say, we know where you are staying. And the parents also condone it, saying that if that person who has impregnated my child is arrested, we are all going to move and come and stay with you, because that person is the breadwinner for our family. It's supporting our family. So that's where we are now.
Okay. I know that the director in the Department of Basic Education, Likho, has to go. I want to take the headlines and perhaps in as much as we continue this conversation with the researchers, just a basic reflection on your part about the extent of the impact of this policy in the education department, that teachers should report instances of statutory rape. Please do bear with us. We're going to come back to you right after the headlines. This is Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. I'm taking the headlines now with Nyakalo Tefu.
Stay informed. Power Talk with Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, 9 a.m. to midday on Power 98.7.
Yes, we are here on Power Talk and speaking about the question of statutory rape within our schools and the policy of the department that the teachers should be reporting this. There is a study conducted by UNISA academics who we have here online. They are going to break down that study for us further, which shows that this is not quite going well, particularly in rural areas. Likho, before we let you go, just your sort of comprehensive response. I'm sure you have heard the study or seen the study, but also the department must have its own position about the impediments to the success of this policy, particularly in rural areas.
First and foremost, Doc, I just want you to just rest assured that I will not be rushing off.
Oh, okay.
Because this matter is very important.
Okay, that helps.
Any other thing else can wait at this point.
Oh, thanks very much.
You can relax now and go back to your original plan.
I appreciate it. Thank you deeply for your grace. Let's go back to you, Prof. I had a couple of clarifications, just basically the methodology of the study, so we get a proper sense of its the credibility, as it were, of its results.
Thank you very much. We've used a methodology which is called cyclical longitudinal ethnography. This is the design which I have developed. It's cyclical because we don't go to a place once, but we go in cycles. And the other issue of its cyclicality is that we get the problem, we look for the solution, we implement, we evaluate at once. And when we say it's longitudinal, you heard me saying it was started in 2010.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very long time. And when we say it's a part of ethnography is you are supposed to go and study the culture of the people. You stay with them. And because under normal circumstances, we are expected to be in the place for 3 months, which is not possible. So we do it intermittently, where every year we visit the site for at least a week, where we will interact with learners, interact with educators, interact with circuit manager, and also the school management team, and even some of the school management committee. And this year, what we started is to also approach some of the parents, because we have realized that we cannot just focus on one element. So what happens is, when we find a problem, like the initial purpose was to empower educators. But when I asked the educators why are learners from this area becoming infected with HIV at a very young age, then they just say, learners are sexually active. You cannot tell them anything. Then I went to the schools to interact with learners. Why are you sexually active? Then the learners said, we want money. Then something like, okay, if we get pregnant, we'll get some grants. And then, because that was an issue, I said, how much is the grant? And by then it was 280. And I said, 280, is it a lot of money? They say, yes. Then we started to divide it by 30, like this. Then it was never something. Then I said, is it still a lot of money? They say, Then I say, what can you buy? Then they mentioned bread. I say, where's the child here? Then we divide it further by 24 to see how much is it per hour. So it's something like 40 cents. Then I say, is it still a lot of money? Until we divide it by a minute where it was less than 1 cent. From there, they say, it's too little. So I said, now what are we going to do? Because this one, you see, is too little. What are we going to do? So we plan with the learners. That's why we say it's just cyclical. We find a problem, we intervene there and there. Then the other issue was we see parents doing it. Then I say, parents, how do you see it? Then I said, let me go and see how you see it. Then I went there, I looked at their accommodation, where learners are staying, the overcrowding. It's so pathetic. It's sub-shack. When you know about the shacks, but that one is sub-shacks. Because somebody was even saying, is this South Africa? We don't expect to see places like this in South Africa. But this is what is happening.
Okay, Prof. So, just for the sake of time, how generalizable is what you found in Vembe? This was the point of this methodological question. Are we able to say the study is generalizable to the villages of South Africa as a whole?
Yes, especially the rural villages in farm schools.
And then why, if the study was limited in Vembe? Why would an ethnographic study in Vembe be generalizable, for instance, to a village in the Eastern Cape?
Not generalizable per se, but if one wants to repeat it because of the methods and also the type of participants and step by step of what is being done. If they want to conduct it maybe in Mutuba, if they
so the findings are not generalizable.
I can say that.
Okay.
But that's
Let me give Ayobami a chance before I go back to Likho if there's anything else in relation to the study that he would like to add. Ayobami?
Good morning, Doc.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you. Shoot.
Can you hear me, Doc?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay, good morning, and thanks for having us here. Yes, I can hear you. Yeah. Thanks. I think Prof has actually talked generally about the research and the outcome of the research. But what I want to add is that you ask whether it can be generalized. Well, if there are similar settings in the country, regardless of which province they are, I think that could be true. The result could also reflect the same thing. However, because it's a qualitative study and it's an ethnography, as you have noted, the standard thing is that you cannot generalize the results. But if we look at the variables and the settings are the same, like where you have teachers or schools where principals or the Department of Education have not communicated the policy, or teachers have not been trained, there could be a kind of generalization there. What I want to say about this study is that we noted that the teachers are actually they were conflicted because for one they want to do the right thing. For those who actually knew about the policy, they wanted to protect the children, but then they are constrained. That's why we use the title "Our Hands Are Tied," because they fear the backlash because of the situation in the prevailing factors and socioeconomic situation in the community, where the parents condone intergenerational relationships and they also condone transactional sexual relationship. So with this, I think the department first need to one will institute a kind of anonymous reporting system. I think that's one of the recommendations that we made. And two, we think that teachers need to be trained and they need to be communicated to about the policy, because the policy may be good, it's actually good. And because it addresses power imbalance, some of these young girls may consented to sex, but they do not have the power on the right place because of the power imbalance. And I think that's what the policy is trying to address. Okay. So the teachers need to be trained, and there need to be engagement with the community itself, especially the leaders, the religious leaders, the traditional leaders, the parents. So that's what I want to add. Okay.
Very complex, Likho. I mean, these children that you preside over have parents. And if parents are complicit to the sort of statutory sexual relations, including what it's called intergenerational sexual relations, what's your assessment? What's your reaction, firstly, to the sort of hardened attitudes against the policy, but also the fact that it targets the teacher? Teachers are not trained. Those are some of the findings, but collaborative work, and this is where I'm saying the complexity of the matter cannot just be resting on the teacher to resolve what seems to be a problem in which parents, the community, the chiefs, and so on and so forth are all involved in what has become a norm, that as long as a girl, can have a baby, they are sexually ready to be sexually active with anybody.
Yeah, absolutely, Doc. I think I want to agree with my colleagues that side that this matter indeed is complex, and a big part of it will be able to deal with it when we intensify on the current training that we provide on comprehensive sexuality education for teachers. You'll recall, Doc, that we have been really reaching out to Parliament to help us affirm the position of government around the provision of comprehensive sexuality education, because there were lots of misconceptions, misinformation, and disinformation about comprehensive sexuality education, which was basically just indicating that basic education is over-sexualizing children. But we've had to help South Africans understand that children are vulnerable without this knowledge. If small children don't know what is a proper physical touch and what is an improper physical touch, they will forever be vulnerable to sexual abuse unless we help them understand that, so that then they're able to protect themselves from it, even though they shouldn't be having this responsibility in the first place, and that they're able to report against it.
Do you have the numbers, maybe, from your perspective, of how much really disruption in terms of numbers pregnancy causes to the teenagers in the schooling system?
It's very difficult to tell at the moment. And so what we use the statistics that are generated by the Department of Health. And these statistics are changing all the time, Doc. It's almost like the teenage pregnancy phenomenon is seasonal in our country. There is a moment when we are plateauing and when we look like we're reducing nicely, and then 1 month or 1 quarter there is just a big spike, and you just never know what would have happened. You still recall that there was a point when we even reported around the margins of 90,000 girls between the ages of 12 and 19 who would have given birth to babies. And so it's just a moving target for us. And sometimes, yes, we provide this information in class through life orientation. And so by design, Doc, the teacher who stands in front of that child has been trained to deliver that content. But where we find gaps, and in agreement with the study that our colleagues would have undertaken that side, is that not all of them, though, have been trained on what to do in the instance of sexual abuse. The protocol for the management and reporting of sexual abuse and harassment in schools is out as part of the package of National School Safety Framework, which then the provincial education departments would have, undertaken. It's just that maybe the pace and the saturation of reach of this training in particular provinces would not have been there. But I understand that in Bembe district in particular, because it's one of our districts that are considered to be high burden districts when it comes to HIV infection, early unintended pregnancy, and gender-based violence, the likelihood is that we would have combination interventions that are happening in Bembe district, with PEPFAR funding that, we were using that site, the Global Fund funding, and also. So there are quite a lot of interventions that are happening in Bembe district. It becomes almost impossible for me to believe that really teachers in Bembe district would not have been trained. In other parts of Limpopo, probably there would be, but if there are teachers that are not trained, particularly in the district in question, it means that it's something that we need to follow up on, because we should be having great saturation in that district, given the fact that they are considered as a high burden district.
What's your reaction to the proposal from the scholars that perhaps what you might consider is an anonymous reporting technique in which they are able to circumvent the stigma related to what seems to be a norm there? So if the teacher finds that a 14-year-old, a 13-year-old, or a 15-year-old is pregnant, then they are able to report it without consequences in terms of social either ostracization or isolation. What's your reaction to that concrete proposal?
We are at the moment looking at what adjustments we can make on the protocol for reporting, because the protocol for reporting, unfortunately, at the moment does not make provision for any anonymous reporting, because I think when we're drafting the protocol and we had approved it with our stakeholders, we didn't think that South Africans would actually stand in the way of the goodwill of reporting sexual abuse to protect children, because we thought we were all on the same page. There is no South African who would ostracize or even harm or threaten anyone who's protecting a child who's being raped. And so we agree, let's report and let's make representation. We know what it is, and the person reporting it would just make representation on their observation of the child and so forth. But indeed, we are learning that some teachers have even been threatened and have had to flee villages because of the harm that comes with reporting. And so that means in the current amendment or revision, we need to make provisions for anonymous reporting, because we don't want to not receive these reports and still leave children destitute just because they are South Africans who don't agree.
Let me quickly take 2 calls before we conclude the conversation. Maybe there are further reflections. Boniswa, 30 seconds in the interest of time. Welcome to Power Talk.
Good day. You know, when it comes to such a topic, I'm not just an educator by qualification, but literally from the depth of my heart. So I'm going to speak for the children and what I think fundamentally are the problems around the topic that we are discussing. Firstly, we come from a community where we've just made it okay for to not have respect for children, to just from outside the school where you think it's okay to behave a certain way. And these are people who are hired into the school. I got a degree. We were thoroughly trained about the Constitution, how to behave around children. I don't necessarily think that is the issue. We are registered with SACE. There's a fee that you pay every year, meaning that you need to behave a certain way. So these educators are registered by SACE, who's responsible to teach us the conduct. There's also trade unions. So here's a short story, just in conclusion, just to see the impact. We needed an office at the school, but we couldn't get because there was tension. So when I arrived, there was tension. Then I tracked the story about the tension is. It's an unresolved rape case that happened in the school, and now there's tension. And because this comrade and this comrade, hey, you can't, this person needs their job, they're a family man, etc., etc. We just come from a community where we don't speak up against the ill-mannered men who think very dirty, who don't behave correctly. If we are to accuse your neighbor from behaving that way, that person, when they go to work, they are going to know that their behavior is not okay. This issue is not a children's issue. It's the fact that most of the time, these things, some of the stories that I know, they happen outside the school. So we plan and we're meeting this weekend. So because we're an alcohol-centered community, we meet in certain gatherings, we have a certain lifestyle. That's how we build the relationship between the adult and the child. And because they go to the same school, but they meet outside the school, we just make these things normal. And they just need to change their behavior.
Okay. That's bonus. So Likho, your parting shot then. I'm worried here at the revelations about HIV infections. I wonder what's your reaction to that particular element that there seems to be, at least in that district, and as far as the study is concerned, also rising levels of HIV infections among teenagers.
I think Doc Boniswa has closed it by saying that this is not a children's issue. It's probably an adult matter that needs to be handled, and that's correct. And I think in conjunction with what the Prof has also said, to say that perhaps we need to move outside of the classroom more and engage communities and community leaders on this, because sometimes they are actually the enemies of progress when it comes to these issues. Doc, we've had instances where a child reports rape, a meeting is called at a school, discussions are held, damages are paid, and that is it. No arrest, nothing whatsoever. And you ask yourself, why is that? And it's because the interference of the community leaders and traditional leaders sometimes leads schools to take such decisions that are not helpful, that are actually harmful to children. So I think we need a much more broader conversation and a much more tighter collaboration, school, community, and societal collaborations to protect children.
What often is the role of SGBs in this entire miasma?
You know, the role of the SGBs really is exactly supposed to be that, the connecting tissue between ourselves and the parental fraternity, who are then forming part of the communities. But, Doc, what we're finding in South Africa right now is that there is a decline in parental involvement. Parents only come to school when their children are bullied, or when there's a report that says the child needs to repeat schooling. But on any other matter, you call a meeting, you call a workshop. We've done many of these workshops on parent-child communication so that we assist parents to facilitate.
Are you able to give a sort of national picture of parental meetings? I mean, on average, what is the percentage of parental attendance?
I don't have those statistics at hand, but I know that the analysis that are coming out of those reports that are being collected across the country are indicating to us that schools are really struggling with parental involvement.
And how do you solve the problems of the children when their parents don't get involved? So we live in a parental child neglect society.
I know, and it's so sad for our children. But I think what schools have done, principals in our country are very creative, Doc. Some of the things that they do, they make it mandatory, almost like we will hold back your child's report until you rock up kind of a thing. You see, now you are being forced by the state
to be
involved, but that's how they get them to be involved. They do all these things.
Okay. Likho Bottoman, the Director of Social Cohesion at the National Department of Basic Education. Thanks deeply for joining us and creating time. And we will keep tabs on this question, but thanks for creating time.
Thank you so much, Doc.
And also the two scholars, Ayobami Adekola and Professor Azwihangswisi Mavhandu-Mudzusi from UNISA at the College of Human Sciences. Thanks to you both for the study. It's time for the news here on Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. The time is 1100 hours. We're going to take the news with Nyakalo Tefu.